$80,000. That's not a credit card shopping spree. That's not reckless living. For a lot of people, including me, that number is the slow accumulation of a car loan, a few medical bills, some student debt, and the creeping balance transfers you made just to survive a hard year. And the advice you get when you're in that hole? Pay more than the minimum. Cut your lattes. Budget harder. Like nobody in $80,000 of debt has thought to try paying more than the minimum. I paid it off in under 4 years, not on a six-figure salary, not with an inheritance, not with some drop-shipping side hustle that made me $30,000 in a weekend. I did it working a regular job in a regular city, with a strategy that combines about 6 principles that financial advisors either don't explain clearly or don't explain at all, because there's no product to sell you at the end of it. Here's what nobody tells you about debt at that scale. The conventional advice isn't wrong, it's just incomplete. And the parts that are missing? That's where 4 years of unnecessary payments live. The first shift I had to make was psychological, and I know that sounds like a self-help detour, but stay with me. I stopped treating my debt like a math problem. $80,000 in interest-bearing debt is not a fixed equation, it's a negotiation, and most people never negotiate. They just pay. They accept every rate, every term, every timeline as though it was handed down by a force of nature rather than written by a financial institution that fully expects you to accept it without question. So I started making calls. I called every creditor I had and asked one simple question. Is there any flexibility on my interest rate? Not every creditor said yes, but enough of them said yes, or offered a hardship rate or a temporary reduced rate that I shaved an average of 3 points off my weight. TED interest rate in a single month. 3 points doesn't sound like much until you do the math on $80,000 over 4 years. It's thousands of dollars, just from asking. Now here's the lever that nobody puts in the same conversation as debt avalanche or debt snowball. The two methods everyone talks about. Both of those strategies tell you which debt to attack first. Avalanche says highest interest rate first. Snowball says smallest balance first for psychological momentum. Both are fine. Both are missing the third lever, principal acceleration on a rotating basis. The idea is simple. Once a month, any extra money, even $50, even $30, goes to principal only, specifically labeled as a principal payment on whichever account has the worst rate that month. You're not just paying down faster, you're collapsing the interest-bearing base. That's the compounding effect working in reverse, for you instead of against you. The bi-weekly payment switch is something I implemented in month 3, and I genuinely cannot believe how few people know this works. Instead of making one monthly payment, I split it in half and paid every 2 weeks. That's it. The result? Because of how calendar months work, you end up making the equivalent of 13 monthly payments per year instead of 12. One extra payment per year, automatically, without ever budgeting for it. On my timeline, that single adjustment removed 14 months from my payoff date. 14 months of interest I never had to pay. Let me talk about invisible income, because this is where things get creative. Invisible income is money generated through actions that don't disrupt your tax picture, don't feel like a second job, and don't require capital to start. For me, that looked like selling tools and gear I genuinely wasn't using on local marketplace apps, doing small handyman tasks for neighbors for cash, and occasionally renting out storage space in my garage. None of these required a business license. None of them were dramatic. Combined, they generated between $200 and $400 extra per month, and every dollar went straight to principal. That's $2,400 to $4,800 per year just from activities I was doing on weekends anyway. Lifestyle compression, not deprivation compression, is a different mindset than budgeting. Budgeting tells you to cut. Compression tells you to audit. I went through every subscription, every recurring expense, every habit purchase, and asked one question. Is this pulling its weight? Not, can I live without it? That question makes you feel punished. Is it pulling its weight? That question is honest. And when I answered it honestly, I found about $340 a month in expenses that were on autopilot and delivering basically nothing to my actual daily satisfaction. Gone. Redirected to debt. I used 2 balance transfer windows during the payoff period. This is a tool that gets dismissed as dangerous, and it can be, if you use it wrong. I used it as an interest freeze. I identified a chunk of my highest rate credit card debt, transferred it to a 0% promotional card during an offer window, and then attacked that chunk aggressively during the interest-free period. No new SPE. Ding on that card. Not $1. Just a surgical principal reduction window. When the promotional period ended, the balance was either zero or significantly reduced. If you treat a balance transfer like a vacation from paying interest instead of a focused assault on principal, you'll end up worse off. I treated it like a timer. There's a concept I think about as community leverage, and it sounds hippie, but it's actually just old-fashioned practical economics. I stopped buying things I could borrow. Tools for home projects, equipment for one-time tasks, even certain kitchen appliances for specific seasonal cooking. I had neighbors and friends who owned things I needed occasionally, and I had things they needed occasionally. We weren't running a commune. We were just being sane about resource allocation. That freed up real dollars every month that went directly to debt. The last piece, and arguably the most important psychologically, was building what I call the buffer before I was done with debt. Counterintuitive, I know. Every debt payoff guru says throw everything at the debt. But I kept a separate $1,000 account that I never touched, never counted as money, never thought of as available. Because the thing that destroys debt payoff plans isn't lack of discipline. It's the unexpected $700 car repair that sends you back to the credit card. My buffer meant that when the unexpected happened, I absorbed it in cash and kept my payoff momentum intact. It saved my plan twice in 4 years. The reason nobody talks about this specific combination of strategies is that it doesn't have a name. It's not a program you can buy. There's no certification, no guru, no course. It's just a set of principles that compound on each other quietly over months and years until one morning you log in, look at a balance, and realize you're done. You already have most of what you need to start this today. The negotiation call costs you 20 minutes. The bi-weekly switch costs you nothing. The audit of your subscriptions takes an hour. None of this requires you to be wealthy, disciplined in some superhuman way, or lucky. It requires you to see your debt not as a sentence, but as a system, and every system has leverage points. Find yours.